Have you ever felt the weight of secrets, the silent burden of a responsibility so profound it reshapes your very being? Imagine dedicating your life to building an impenetrable fortress, brick by digital brick, only to vanish into the shadows, carrying the unspoken truths that could shatter everything. This is the story of a woman who built the very systems designed to keep her out, a ghost from the machine's own memory, returning to a world that has forgotten her face but cannot deny the indelible mark she left behind. It's a poignant tale about identity, legacy, and the quiet heroism of those who become the very foundations of the world they protect. The security officer's voice rang with calm authority as he blocked her path at the gate. Civilian contractor access denied. Your ID isn't clearing. His stance was firm, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't reach for backup credentials. He didn't raise his voice or ask for additional verification. He simply stood there, unyielding. The woman in front of him said nothing. She didn't argue, didn't try to explain. She remained still, her face unreadable, her eyes steady. Just a middle-aged civilian, plainly dressed, carrying no official paperwork, only a basic contractor's ID badge that looked like it had been printed in a rush. To him, she seemed entirely unremarkable, but then the scanner accidentally swept across the inside of her wrist, and the base's security system lit up like it had just been struck by lightning. A high-pitched alarm blared. Warning lights pulsed along every corridor. Emergency lockdown triggered instantly, slamming steel barriers into place and sealing off access points across the base. In the control room, every screen displayed the same line of glowing red text, a name no one had seen in 3 years. A name buried deep within the system's root code, a name not even high-ranking officers fully understood. Commander Evelyn Blake, or rather, Brigadier General Evelyn Blake, retired. The system ghost, the original architect of Black Ridge Air Force Base's entire cyber defense infrastructure. No one expected her to return. She had walked away from all of it 3 years ago, her sudden medical retirement officially attributed to stress-related illness. But unofficially, those close to the truth knew. Evelyn had been the foundation upon which Black Ridge's invisible defenses were built. The classified systems that masked the base's most sensitive operations, missile guidance research, stealth drone control, black-budget AI prototypes, had all pulsed through digital arteries she designed. And the toll of carrying those secrets, of living inside the machine for too long, had eventually broken something in her. She vanished without ceremony, without farewell, simply disappeared. And yet here she was again, returning not as the iron-backed commander she once was, but as a civilian consultant under direct orders from the Pentagon. Her assignment was deceptively simple: conduct a blind security audit, slip past the upgraded defenses, and evaluate whether the base could still catch threats that didn't wear enemy uniforms. No one was told in advance. That was part of the test. Now she stood just outside the perimeter she helped create, facing down systems that had once answered only to her. There was no brass on her shoulders now, no stars, no salutes, only a faded contractor badge and a small tattoo on her wrist, something that looked at a glance like Unsung art. But that ink wasn't decorative. It was a biometric cipher encoded with her clearance, something far older than the current generation of personnel even realized. The base's entire security team was new. The last 3 years had seen full turnover. The young officer before her, he couldn't be more than 25, had no idea he was about to confront the very woman who had authored the training manual he probably still kept bookmarked on his tablet. Inside the reception area, Evelyn watched with a mix of curiosity and weary recognition. The facial recognition units were still mounted exactly where she had recommended, angled for maximum peripheral detection. The access control consoles used the same interface logic she'd developed. Even the emergency lockdown sequence now blaring across the base still carried her code's watermark, a quiet digital echo of the sleepless nights she'd once spent tweaking every variable. She saw it all, everything she had built still humming, still working, still following her lead even in her absence. And now it was preparing to lock her out. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was about to be denied access to a facility whose very heartbeat she had once shaped, by protocols and systems she had engineered, now in the hands of people who didn't even know her name. The young officer stepped closer, clipboard in hand, voice practiced and precise. "Ma'am, I'll need to see your identification and escort authorization." His tone was confident, rehearsed. It held the kind of authority that comes from training manuals, not experience. Evelyn nodded slightly, reaching into her jacket pocket. She pulled out the ID, the same contractor badge that had failed the scan, the same one that was never meant to succeed. She knew it wouldn't clear. That was the entire point. The Pentagon wasn't testing whether the system could verify a badge. They wanted to know if Black Ridge could still recognize threats that came in shapes they weren't expecting. Threats that didn't wear combat boots or carry weapons. Threats that looked like civilians but carried ghosts in their veins. As she handed over the ID, she allowed herself the faintest of smiles. This young officer had no idea he was about to submit her credentials into a system that would respond in ways he'd never trained for. Because it didn't matter what the badge said, her clearance was older than his career, hard-coded into the digital nervous system of the base itself. The real test was never whether they could keep her out. It was whether they still knew what danger looked like when it walked in without knocking. The real test isn't whether they can process her ID. It's whether they'll realize who she truly is once the machines start talking. The young security officer takes her contractor badge with that unshakable confidence only the newly trained seem to possess. The kind of certainty that hasn't yet been tested by real-life chaos. His name tag reads Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He probably finished his security certification just a few months back. "Let me run this through our system," he says, inserting the ID into the scanner with the smooth efficiency of someone who's rehearsed this routine dozens of times. "This scanner is military grade, ma'am. Latest generation. Detects any kind of forgery or unauthorized access attempt." Evelyn offers a polite nod, the corner of her mouth twitching ever so slightly in amusement. "Military grade," he says. She remembers approving the procurement request for this exact model. She also remembers spending 3 nights at headquarters programming in the emergency backdoor codes. Sector-specific overrides embedded so deeply, no one would notice unless they knew what to look for. The scanner beeps. Red lights blaze across the interface. A bold "access denied" glares from the screen. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Rodriguez says, now adopting that unmistakably condescending tone that young soldiers often use with civilians. "Your credentials aren't clearing. Civilian contractors require pre-authorized escort documentation. You can't just show up at a secure military base and, is there a problem here?" The voice comes from behind. A second guard steps up, this one older, a little more composed. His uniform reads Corporal Stevens. 2 years of experience, maybe 3. Enough to cultivate a healthy suspicion of anyone outside the system. He glances at the scanner, then at Evelyn, expression cool but practiced. This isn't his first rodeo. "Contractor IDs not validating," Rodriguez explains. "No escort authorization, no clearance paperwork. Looks like another civilian hoping to charm their way through." Stevens smirks. They never learn, do they? Then turning his attention to her, he adds with forced patience, "Ma'am, this isn't some office park or commercial hub. You're standing at the gate of a United States Air Force installation. We don't play around with access here. Our systems were designed by the top cybersecurity experts in the country. Every inch of this place is monitored. Everything's tracked. Every identity verified." Evelyn arches an eyebrow almost imperceptibly. "Top cybersecurity minds," he says. She can almost quote the rest of that line. It's lifted straight out of the Defense Handbook. One she helped author. The very protocols these men are enforcing were drafted, coded, and stress-tested by her. Stevens continues, oblivious, his tone growing more self-important. "This system's unbreakable. Multi-tier encryption, biometric overlays, live threat diagnostics. Nobody gets through unless the system says they can. It's impossible to fool." "Impossible to fool," she muses. "Unless, of course, you know about the override pathways in Sector 7, 12, and 23, or the dormant emergency bypass channels embedded at root level, or the obsolete clearance signatures that, despite every audit, are still active in the system's legacy layer. Those she installed herself. You see this readout? Rodriguez gestures toward the glowing monitor, eager to show off the scanner's bells and whistles. It's not just reading your ID, it's running facial recognition, cross-referencing federal records, and even monitoring your micro-expressions for deception cues. The system knows if you're lying before you even open your mouth. The system knows, Evelyn thinks, almost fondly. Oh, if only you understood how right you are. A small crowd has begun to gather. Curious base personnel drift toward the checkpoint, drawn by the tension in the air. A few chuckle, clearly entertained by what they assume is another clueless civilian getting schooled in military protocol. Others nod appreciatively at the guard's confident explanations. Not one of them, not a single soul, recognizes the woman standing there, calm and still, in the center of the commotion. "Ma'am," Stephen says, drawing out the word now with theatrical patience, "you'll need to get in touch with whoever contracted you. Get the appropriate clearance and come back with an escort. This is a high-security facility. We don't take chances." "We take security very seriously," Rodriguez echoes, puffing up. "This base has never experienced a breach, not one. The system's flawless." Evelyn speaks at last. Her voice is smooth, even, and low, the kind that doesn't need to rise to command attention. "It's an impressive system," she agrees mildly. "Truly, but something's been on my mind." She offers the ID badge back, her hand extended just enough for Rodriguez to reach. But then as he leans forward, she pivots subtly, allowing the scanner to catch the underside of her wrist. The tattoo. For one heartbeat, nothing happens. A long second where the only sound is the distant hum of air conditioning and quiet static from a nearby comms unit. Then, beep, beep, beep. The scanner erupts. Not just a single red alert, but a cascade. Alarms flaring, warning lights racing across the console in a spiraling surge. Emergency protocols kick in like a digital reflex, instant and unstoppable. Alarms erupted throughout the Black Ridge security station, shrill and unrelenting. Every monitor within the control hub blinked rapidly, shifting from routine surveillance footage to a single urgent directive that overtook every screen. Ghost protocol activated. Priority authentication detected. Override all standard procedures. This is not a drill. Rodriguez stared at the display, utterly perplexed. "What the hell is going on?" he muttered under his breath. He wasn't new to strange events at the gate, but this was something else entirely. Next to him, Corporal Stevens snatched up his radio. "Control, we've got what looks like a system malfunction at the main gate. All scanners are showing—" "Negative, Corporal." A voice cut in sharply, the tone clipped and commanding. "That's not a malfunction. Stand down immediately. I repeat, do not detain the individual. Admiral Shaw is en route." That silenced the entire room. Admiral Shaw never left his office for minor issues, certainly not for a glitch, and absolutely never for anything involving civilian contractors. Rodriguez glanced back at his screen, then up at the woman standing calmly at the center of the gate, Evelyn, then back at the screen. The information now flashing before him wasn't just above his clearance. It was beyond levels he even knew existed. He hadn't even heard of this tier of access. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, voice lowered as his throat dried. I don't understand. Your ID didn't register any clearance before, but now the system is identifying you as, he faltered, brow furrowed. Not someone with clearance, someone who is the clearance." Stevens remained frozen, still holding the radio, color draining from his face. "Control, can you confirm the identity of—" "Negative, Corporal," the voice interrupted again, firmer this time. "Wait for Admiral Shaw. Do not ask further questions. Do not run additional scans. Just wait." Amid the confusion, Evelyn Blake stood perfectly still, quiet and composed. She didn't need to say a word. Her presence alone disrupted their entire framework. Around her, young officers, bright-eyed and fresh, tried to process what was happening. Only moments ago, they'd been praising the infallibility of their security system. Now that same system was telling them to halt, to stand down, to acknowledge a type of authority they'd never even been briefed on. The ink on her wrist, previously assumed to be a tattoo, pulsed subtly, not decoration, but a biometric signature. Quantum encrypted, custom designed by her own hand. That tiny code embedded in her skin whispered truths the system couldn't ignore. It knew her, even when no one else did, especially when no one else was supposed to. She had built this system, not just programmed it, but designed it to respond to her in the moments when she wanted to disappear or reappear. These soldiers had placed complete faith in their digital infrastructure, only for that very infrastructure to reveal something their training never prepared them for. That some people don't use systems. They are the system. So where does identity really live? Is it imprinted on a government-issued ID card or encoded within the DNA of the networks that shape nations? If you believe legacy isn't just archived in official documents, if you believe true influence is written in source code, then understand this. The machines remember, even when people forget. Word of the Ghost Protocol's activation spread across Black Ridge like wildfire. It leapt from department to department in seconds. Every division lead received the same priority message. Unscheduled, high-priority authentication detected at the main gate. Inside the command center, officers crowded over terminals, whispering, staring at encrypted readouts and system flags that made no sense. These weren't simply new levels of access. They were ancient, relic-tier permissions no longer in circulation. And the system wasn't just acknowledging Evelyn's presence. It was reacting to her like a missing core component had just been reinstalled, as if the structure recognized her as part of itself. "Sir," Lieutenant Harper called out, tension crackling in her voice. "The authentication, it's showing clearance levels that predate the current system by at least 3 years." She turned toward Colonel Martinez, the base's head of security. "Whoever this is, they've got admin privileges that override everything." Martinez leaned forward, scanning the data. His jaw tightened as he traced the readouts. "Run a full background check. Cross-reference all current personnel, former staff, contractors, everything." "We tried," Harper responded, her fingers already flying across the keyboard. "The file's locked behind clearance levels I can't access. But, sir," she hesitated, "the system keeps referencing something called Project Digital Fortress." Martinez's face went still. Digital Fortress wasn't just a name. It was the classified designation for the entire Black Ridge security network, the foundation of everything. It was the transformation program that had rebuilt the base into what it was today. And now the system was identifying a ghost from that project. Someone not just tied to the program's history, but woven into its core. Martinez's tone was clipped, urgent. "Standard installation into one of the most digitally secure facilities in the United States. Pull the Project Digital Fortress files." Harper's fingers hovered uncertainly above the keyboard. "Sir, I don't have... Use my clearance," Martinez cut him off. "Emergency protocols." Without another word, Harper began typing furiously. One by one, classified files started flashing across the main screen. Schematics, time-stamped project timelines, black-barred budget allocations, redacted personnel assignments. But then, centered on the screen like a ghost stepping into daylight, was a name that brought the entire room to a standstill. "Commander Evelyn C. Blake," someone muttered under their breath. "Jesus Christ." As Harper continued scrolling, the files began to reveal the scope of what Blake had built. It wasn't just impressive, it defied logic. Over the course of 18 months, she had designed and led the implementation of a security system so advanced, so airtight, it became the standard for every high-level military installation across the globe. Quantum encrypted authentication protocols that couldn't be cracked even with next-generation processing power. Predictive algorithms that identified threats before they even surfaced. Behavioral recognition systems that mapped patterns across thousands of data points to sniff out sabotage before a single finger touched a keypad. And yet, none of that compared to what came next. Harper stumbled slightly as he scrolled into the deeper layers of the file, personal logs and notes Blake had left behind. The air in the room shifted. She hadn't just designed the system, she was part of it. Blake had gone so far as to encode her biometric signature directly into the foundational layers of the security system itself. Her retina scans, heartbeat rhythm, and even neural impulse patterns had been used as encryption keys. In emergencies, the system wouldn't respond to any general command. It would respond only to her. She had made herself not just a gatekeeper, but the gate itself. Harper's voice was faint, almost hollow. Sir, according to these records, Commander Blake didn't just walk away. She vanished. Right after discovering a major vulnerability, one that could have compromised the entire national defense network. Martinez turned, frowning. She tried to report it? Yes, she brought it to the Pentagon, but Harper hesitated. But what, Lieutenant? She discovered members of her own team were involved, selling access codes to foreign intelligence agencies. She reported them, but before she could testify, she disappeared. She went into hiding, Martinez said slowly, piecing it together aloud, because she became the target. Everyone in the room froze, the weight of that revelation hitting all at once. The woman they had dismissed as a possible threat wasn't just a former officer. She wasn't just a system architect. She was the unacknowledged protector who had sacrificed her future, maybe even her safety, to shield everything they now took for granted. Meanwhile, at the main gate, an official black vehicle rolled to a stop. Out stepped Admiral Shaw, flanked by two military police officers. Shaw's presence always brought silence, but today something else clung to him. Something brittle, as if even he wasn't fully prepared for what he might find. He scanned the chaotic scene, security officers, scattered personnel, confused chatter. And then he saw her. There, standing quietly amid flashing alarms and uncertain stares, was Evelyn Blake. Her posture calm, her expression unreadable. Her hair was streaked with silver now, and the years had left their mark, but her eyes were sharp as ever. Shaw's step faltered. For a second, he didn't look like an admiral. He looked like a man seeing a ghost. "Everyone stand down," Shaw barked, his voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Clear the area now." Rodriguez and Stevens moved instinctively, still reeling from the revelations. Shaw approached Blake slowly, like a man approaching something sacred. When he spoke, it was low, respectful. "Commander," she offered a slight nod. "Admiral, took you long enough. I've been testing your response time." For the first time in what felt like years, a smile cracked across Shaw's face. "Still running unauthorized system checks, I see." "Oh, I've changed," Evelyn replied, glancing at the confusion still rippling through the base. "Your team spent 10 minutes explaining to me how flawless their security system is. Not one of them realized they were describing my system. To me." Shaw turned to Sergeant Rodriguez, whose face was pale as ash, still holding it as scanner like a shield. "Sergeant," Shaw said, his voice heavy, "do you have any idea who you've been interrogating?" Rodriguez stammered. "Sir, the system says it says she has those clearances because she is the system," Shaw interrupted, stepping forward. "Commander Blake designed every protocol you use, every scanner you operate, every fail-safe you rely on. She wrote the authentication software that approves your every login, the emergency routines you drilled on in training, and the AI models that determine threat levels. Every layer of security here traces back to her." Rodriguez looked like the air had been sucked from his lungs. Stevens looked ready to collapse. Shaw's voice rose, commanding, "You owe her your silence, your security, and quite frankly, your job." And just like that, the past rewrote the present. The earlier misunderstanding trails behind her throughout the tour. He doesn't say much, but his eyes never leave her. Every word she says, every subtle nod of approval she gives to the team, seems to deepen his respect for her. At one point, Evelyn pauses beside a diagnostic console and glances back at him. "You're still following me?" she teases, raising an eyebrow. Rodriguez stiffens, caught off guard. "Just observing and learning, General," she smirked. "Good answer." By early evening, word of her return has spread beyond Blackage. Messages from other bases begin to flood in. A few are official communiques recognizing her role and requesting her direct consultation. Others are personal, thank yous from individuals whose careers or missions were saved by her systems. Evelyn, who had spent the past 3 years in isolation, watching from the shadows, feels the tide turning. Not just in how she is seen, but in the purpose she once sacrificed everything to uphold. She finds herself in a conference room that now doubles as a temporary command hub for her audit. Monitors line the walls, each displaying diagnostics, live simulations, and encrypted data streams. It's a room built for precision and trust, two things she had once lost faith in. But now, with engineers, officers, and analysts waiting for her input like disciples before a master, something inside her begins to settle. Not entirely at peace, but aligned. Colonel Martinez enters the room quietly and salutes. "General Blake, I wanted to say something, if I may." Evelyn gestures for him to proceed. "Back when your report was buried and you vanished, I was one of the people who questioned your motives. I thought maybe you'd gone rogue, but I was wrong. We all were. And I'm here to say thank you for not giving up, even when the rest of us did." Evelyn doesn't respond right away. She studies Martinez for a moment, then offers a quiet nod. "You don't need to thank me, Colonel. Just make sure no one ever has to vanish for doing the right thing again." Outside, under the growing twilight, the recruits have gathered in formation for their end-of-day drill. The cadence of their calls echoes faintly into the corridors. Shaw steps beside her at the glass window, watching the scene unfold below. "You know," he says, his tone less formal now, "when I heard whispers that the system ghost might be alive, I didn't believe it. But seeing you here again, it feels like the foundation we've been patching together finally has its architect back." Evelyn watches the recruits. Her expression is unreadable, but there's a weight in her gaze. "They don't know what's coming," she says quietly. "They don't see the cracks until something breaks." She glances at Shaw. "Let's make sure they never have to." The celebration that night is modest but heartfelt. Not an official ceremony, but an organic acknowledgement from the people who now understood exactly what she had done for them. There's laughter, quiet toasts, and a steady stream of questions about system enhancements and deployment timelines. Evelyn answers what she can, always redirecting attention to the future rather than her past. Near midnight, she slips away from the crowd and returns to the server room, the heart of the system she designed. Alone, she places her palm against the cold glass housing the central node. The soft hum of energy pulses beneath her fingers. This was where it all began, where she made the decision to defy the chain of command, to tell the truth, and to vanish. Now, standing here again, surrounded by the legacy of that decision, Evelyn Blake, now Brigadier General Blake, doesn't feel like a ghost anymore. She feels like she's come home. Rodriguez, recently reassigned as her temporary aide after their unexpected encounter at the security checkpoint, had a question he couldn't shake. "General, I've been meaning to ask," he said as they walked side by side down the corridor. "When you designed the biometric authentication system, did you always plan to use a tattoo for your identifier?" Evelyn's fingers brushed her wrist instinctively, as if the memory was imprinted deeper than skin. "The tattoo wasn't part of the original blueprint," she admitted, voice warm but clear. "I added it later, once I realized there might come a day when every official credential I had could be stripped away. I needed a way to prove who I was, to the system and to myself." She let the silence linger for a breath before continuing. "Turned out to be more prophetic than I ever anticipated." Rodriguez's gaze lingered on the ink symbol, curiosity dancing in his eyes. "What does it mean? The mark itself?" "It's a fusion," Evelyn said, eyes thoughtful. "Binary code in an ancient Celtic network pattern. The binary spells out guardian in machine language. The network design represents unbroken cycles, continuous protection, even when the guardian isn't seen." Rodriguez nodded, absorbing the layered symbolism. "So, like you protecting the base even when you weren't physically here." A faint smile touched her lips. "Something like that." That day ended with an unexpected announcement. The base's personnel were summoned to the main auditorium. No warning, no agenda. The room filled quickly, a mixture of anticipation and whispered speculation rippling through the gathered crowd. Admiral Shaw took the stage first, standing tall beneath the spotlight. He began with what they expected: the formal recognition of Evelyn Blake's promotion and the commendation for her extraordinary service. But then his tone shifted, and so did the room's mood. "Brigadier General Blake," and he said, "has agreed to return, not as an officer in uniform, but as Blackage's chief digital security architect. She will oversee the development of next-generation security protocols and lead the creation of our advanced training programs." The applause was immediate, swelling into a roar. Evelyn, still adjusting to the weight of her new rank and the fresh spotlight that came with it, stepped up to the podium. She looked composed, but her voice carried a tremor of emotion as she began. 3 years ago, she said slowly, I left this base with the heavy belief that I had failed. The breaches we suffered, the betrayals, the compromises, it felt like everything we had built was fragile, maybe even broken. She paused, scanning the room. There were faces she recognized, colleagues, friends, but also many new ones, fresh recruits, the next generation. I was wrong, she said with quiet strength. Security isn't just about systems or protocols. It's about the people who uphold them. The ones who understand that protection isn't just a bomb, it's a sacred responsibility. She gestured toward the massive displays illuminating the updated systems that now safeguarded the base. The technology pulsed around them, sleek, alive, and resilient. These networks will evolve. Threats will become smarter, more dangerous. Technology will move beyond what we can currently imagine. But the principle we stand on, that won't change. We protect what matters, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The crowd rose to their feet. The ovation rolled like thunder, lasting far longer than she expected. And in that moment, after 3 long, uncertain years, Evelyn Blake no longer felt like an outsider. She was home, and she belonged. In a world obsessed with laminated IDs, encrypted passwords, and institutional titles, there are people whose authority can't be revoked or counterfeited. They don't need a badge to be trusted. They've earned it through their choices, their sacrifices, and the indelible marks they leave on the systems they build and the lives they safeguard. Evelyn Blake was one of those people. 3 months after her return, Blackidge Base now operated at a level of digital security envied by installations across the globe. But its true evolution wasn't measured in firewalls or encryption. It was in understanding, a deeper appreciation of what expertise really looked like. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, promoted to lead the security team, kept a framed image on his desk. It wasn't of family or friends, or even the medals he'd earned. It was a screenshot. The moment the Ghost Protocol activated at the gate, identifying Evelyn when no one else could. A reminder burned into pixels that assumptions are dangerous, and the most important people often defy expectation. I learned something that day, Rodriguez would say to every new batch of recruits during orientation. The system didn't recognize her because of a title, not because of clearance codes or chain of command. It recognized her because she was the system. She had written herself into its very foundation. Lieutenant Harper, now working directly under Evelyn's wing, had taken that lesson to heart. Together, they were developing what they call legacy authentication protocols, systems that would recognize the unique digital fingerprints of their creators, designs that ensured architects like Evelyn could never be locked out of their own systems again. But perhaps the most profound transformation at Blackidge isn't something you can hold in your hands or upload to a terminal. It's not about hardware or upgrades in artificial intelligence. The true shift is one of mindset, of shared values. A cultural evolution has taken root within the walls of the base. Now, every month without fail, the personnel gather for what has become an honored tradition. Invisible Heroes Day. It's a ceremony dedicated to the quiet force behind every successful operation. The coders, the protocol designers, the systems architects, those who don't seek recognition but build the invisible frameworks that safeguard lives every day. At the heart of each ceremony stands Evelyn Blake, once just a brilliant mind behind the systems, now Brigadier General Blake, known also as the System Ghost and the Architect. Her voice carries across the auditorium as she shares stories not just of lines of code or network security layers, but of duty, foresight, and the unseen weight of responsibility that comes with designing systems meant to outlive you. When you write code, she says to the assembled personnel, eyes scanning the rows of uniforms and fresh recruits, you're not just patching vulnerabilities or designing a slick new interface. You're forging tools that will stand between danger and people you may never know, in battles you can't predict, long after your name is forgotten by the system you built. As she speaks, she unconsciously brushes the inside of her left wrist, where beneath the edge of her uniform sleeve, a faint tattoo remains visible, one that only those who know her best understand the weight of. Her next words are more personal, and they land heavy with truth. Some people wait for the system to validate their worth, she says, pausing. But others realize they are the validation. They are the reason the system exists in the first place. There's a stillness in the room as her words settle. Young faces, some with bright eyes full of ambition, others more reserved but just as focused, watch her closely. Among them sit future engineers, cybersecurity strategists, digital infrastructure architects. They are listening not only to a commander, but to someone who has walked the hard path and built something enduring from the shadows. When the ceremony ends, Evelyn doesn't disappear behind closed doors. She walks through the base, the same one she once mapped down to its deepest sublayer of security. She passes the scanners at each corridor, machines that still recognize the rhythm of her heartbeat, the geometry of her gait, the data signature etched into her DNA. They open without hesitation. But now she carries visible credentials too, an ID badge clipped to her chest. Not because she needs to prove anything to the systems. Those were her design. She wears it for the people, for the colleagues who walk beside her now, and the new recruits who deserve to know exactly who leads them. Outside, near the main gate, something new has appeared. A plaque polished and mounted beside the final security checkpoint. Its engraving is simple but profound. A tribute to those who build the defenses, especially the ones who never stand on this side of the wall, the ones whose work protects from afar, unseen, but never unneeded. When your legacy walks through the door, the plaque reads, your ID becomes irrelevant. But when your legacy never left, identification was never needed in the first place.